Hi, I'm Celia Boothman, founder of LTRcoaching, and I'd like to welcome you to the Inspired Triathletes podcast, where I'll be bringing you stories from female triathletes and taking on topics that are important to women in the sport. Hello and welcome. Today's podcast is going to be with Courtney Hyde, is that right?
Yes.
Got your last name right? Who is a triathlon coach and GB age group triathlete. So we're going to talk a little bit about her journey to becoming an age group triathlete, what kind of inspired her to go down that route and what it was like for her when she was training to compete at age group level. And a little bit about her frustrations with being coached and how she developed her coaching practice. And we'll see what happens along the way. And if anything else comes up, then we're going to chat about that as well. But first of all, thanks for joining me, Courtney. If you'd just like to give us a little bit of background, how long, how did you get into triathlon? That's probably where we want to start. What background did you have before you got into triathlon, and how many years were you doing triathlon before you started wanting to compete in the GB age group team?
Yeah, so I haven't always been a triathlete, so that's my first confession. But I started life as a modern pentathlete. You get some points if you manage to name all 5 sports. So it's running, swimming, shooting, riding and fencing. Yeah, and so I started that at age, I think I maybe did my first competition at age 11 or 12, and then competed all the way through to about age 17 or 18. And during that time, I was talent spotted by the GB team, and I competed internationally for GB at various levels like Europeans and World Cup. And as you can imagine, competing in like 5 sports took a lot of my time. So when I was at school, most of my half terms were out on training camps, and all my mornings, evenings were spent usually at the pool and doing various other things. So this multi-eventing has always been in my life. I'm quite used to juggling lots of sports and also lots of other things going on as well. For one reason or another, I actually moved away from pentathlon, and I can maybe go into the reasons why that was, but I kind of lost my love for the sport a little bit, and I kind of actually stopped doing any sort of training for quite a while actually. And but I wanted to kind of do something. So when I was at sixth form and uni, I joined the university cross country team. Got really involved in that. I did a lot of work on boosting the number of girls in the team, because when I first arrived there was 4 of us.
Okay, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, you turn up to training sessions and just think, where are all the ovaries at? Come on, people. So I did some volunteer work to I organised a girls running club. I just for girls, did it around campus, and some of them were really good. I just said, why aren't you going to the university club? So I tried to really boost it there, and by the time I left, the numbers were significantly higher. I think our total was 25 by the time I left, and it was increasing year on year after that.
That's amazing. So what was the reason that people didn't want to join the cross country club?
I think honestly it was I think they felt they were too slow.
Right.
Not for me. I don't have anyone to go with, were common things. If you looked at the training sessions, the guys in there were really, really nice. It's nothing to do with them personally, but when you sort of turn up to a session and it's just men, it's, and what they were actually quite a little bit bad at was dropping you on sessions. So what you'd end up, and it's not to say that the girls are the slowest ones in the team, because I certainly beat quite a few boys on the team, but you'd find that you'd get left on your own, and you'd do a lap around it's a 5-mile loop around the town, and you didn't want to be left by yourself because it was quite dark, and maybe it's unfamiliar, you didn't quite know the route, like you don't want to be just dropped. So
Yeah.
I had to sort of like educate them a little bit on, right, no drop policy.
Yeah.
You may actually have to run 10 to 15 seconds slower per kilometer than you would do normally. Like, it's not going to harm you, but it
No.
will really make sure that this person keeps showing up.
Yeah, I just wanted to chip in there because it's reminding me of a cross country group. Well, it was like a fell running group that I was in Sheffield, and it's exactly the same. It was like you'd run out to the Peak District from Sheffield, so it's quite a long way, and it was on, off road and quite often dark, and they would just go, and like if you didn't know the route, it was like, well, I've got to be able to keep up to sort of know my way back kind of thing if I
Yeah,
can't keep
exactly.
up with them. And so that was a massive barrier for a lot of people. I could kind of keep up with most of the time, and there was every now and then someone would drop back and make sure that everyone was there. But I remember there was a few people would come and then they'd just never come back again because it was like, well, they're just going to leave me and I can't keep up. So
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
kind of a common thing sometimes in these clubs. They kind of don't think about how it might be if you are at the back and it's like, oh, tough, you kind of just left on your own.
Yeah,
So
it's I don't know whether they adopt this like survival of the fittest like
yeah, it's
strategy,
not very helpful,
but
is
it's
it?
just really not, it's not inclusive and it's not
No.
helpful. So yeah, other things we used to do as well, because we used to meet on campus, but where most people used to live was a couple miles out, and some of the streets that like around like nighttime, you wouldn't necessarily want to be running around both
Yeah.
out, especially not as a young female. Like, there had been cases of people having like it being followed, but just having like abuse at the, and it's not nice.
Yeah.
There's something that we used to organize was a just a knock on the door. So you'd like go to your session, but then people like knock on the door, oh right, going to our running now, and then we'd like pick people up on the way.
Oh,
So
nice.
all of us would be able to like go there together, and we'd all organize it so that we could run there to the session safely, and then we'd drop everyone off on the way back as well. And that helped with just boosting the numbers. And also accountability as well. If someone's like coming around knocking on your door and you're like, right, get out.
Oh, sorry, I'm in my pajamas.
Yeah.
Can't really do that. Oh, that sounds amazing. Sounds like there's some, things that people could probably take away if they were like running other groups as well for, to help women be included and because it is a common thing, isn't it? It's like, I don't want to be last, I don't want to be the slowest, and most of the time you're not, but there's that fear, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely.
No, the other thing I wanted to ask you was, how did you kind of find out about pentathlon? Was that something in your school then, or how did you get into it?
I lived in an area, and it was a very like rural like area, and there was a riding stable a couple of kilometers from my house. So I already go to like run there, like check all the like ponies out, and then like sort of run back home. But I think over time, because I spent a lot of my summer holidays like mucking out the horses and stuff, that the owner of the riding stable, I think, probably like took pity on me. Said, oh, you can have a few riding lessons as well if you like.
Nice.
So I got into horse riding from that. I did a fair bit of like running at school, like it's just something that you just did in PE lessons and school cross country, stuff like that. And I started going to events, like horse riding events, via this thing called the Pony Club. And Pony Club have a triathlon like scene, which was running, swimming and shooting.
Right.
So I ended up like picking up a couple more sports through that. And I did Pony Club Tetrathlon, so 4 sports, which included horse riding as well, like round like cross country field. And yeah, gone in through that. And I think then I had like the 4 sports, then I just had to take up fencing.
Okay.
So it just all kind of like came about through that. And I've been horse riding for years and years. Running was something I sort of was pretty like okay at from school. Swimming, I was pretty rubbish at initially, and then I got some help with my stroke technique, and then I got a lot better. I just sort of just picked it up through that, really. I think as a kid, like you just like a sponge to new ideas and new skills. So I ended up picking up things very, very quickly and getting quite good at it quite quickly.
Oh, amazing. How was the fencing? How did you
Yeah.
go?
Yeah, it's difficult to explain the like what it's like, I suppose, because it's very like skill based, very technical, but you also have to be extremely like powerful, which is, I guess, different to the other sports. Like they're less explosive, whereas fencing is a very explosive sport, very, very technical. Also a lot to do with mindset as well, because you're going directly against your opponent in a, not like a fight, you're like, it's like but essentially it is. So you can figure out like what your opponent is going to do, or how they usually like fence, and then you can figure out how to beat them.
Nice. Okay, that sounds really amazing. Quite interesting. Okay, so you went from pentathlon to cross country running, and then you're about at university now. So
yeah, at university I think I was still running. After that I moved to London, and then I took up hockey.
okay.
I know hockey's a
I
great way
used
to
to
meet
play
people.
hockey. It's great. Yeah.
Hockey's a great way to meet people. I played hockey for about three or 4 years. Worked my way up from I think it was like ladies fours all the way up to ladies twos in that time. And just really enjoyed like the social aspect of it. But I think I think with team things it's really good, and you celebrate and commiserate as a team. But I was always sort of looking for something like else. Like I was still running, was training with hockey like twice a week. I was finding though, and I think this was one of my biggest frustrations with playing hockey, was that there's a number of bruises.
Yeah.
Like I was like
quite bad, isn't it?
Yeah, just like bruised shins, bruised feet, just like things like that. And I kind of got to a point where I'm like, it's like sometimes I couldn't do my run training because I stubbed my toe, or someone, I got things like that, and it started to get sort of a bit annoying. And I think at that point I got into running it like sort of more proper, like a little bit more seriously. But it is like 10k running race, and I found it really, really hard. I was so used to doing like much shorter events. So in when I was competing like in modern pentathlon, it was maybe up to about 3k. So I hadn't really done the volume to like warrant getting a good time in a 10k for like quite some time. And I found it really, really difficult. And I just thought like how have I got to a point where I can't, like 10k race is like too challenging for me. And I almost felt like a bit of a bee in my bonnet about it. I was like, this is ridiculous. What can I do instead, which is more a challenge than this, but will like help me on the way to that. So I then looked up, I think I did like the London Duathlon, which is like a 10k run, like 40k cycle and 5k run. And
it's not a short one then. Wasn't a short.
No. So my logic was like, in that 10k race, I like really like struggled to finish it in the last 2 or 3k. I thought like, what's the way for me to make sure like I absolutely do finish it? I thought, well, if I've got another event I have to do afterwards, then I have to like see it through.
Yeah.
So I did that. So the logic behind it in this like duathlon was, got the 10k like running race, like my bike's already transitioned, so I need to go and pick it up. Better get on it. I'll see how my legs feel. Did the 40k cycle, and then by the time you get to the like 5k run, like my legs felt absolutely disgusting. Got off the bike, I thought, this is just horrible. Why do people put themselves through this? But I think it's like, like some.
And then you did it again.
Where you're in it so far that you may as well finish it.
Yeah.
So that was my logic.
Yeah.
Like doing it, and I was like super like happy like with finishing it. I was, I think everyone's first triathlon, you have to like beg, steal and borrow kit for it. Is there something you kind of just like, no one's fully kitted out for your first event. It's just like, I was using the bike I like commuted on. It was just a really like pretty old like road bike. Didn't really have a proper like tri-suit. It was just, I remember having to like unpin my race number from my like front kit and then back again, because I didn't know about race.
You hadn't, yeah.
Like, why would you? But yeah, kind of like I enjoyed it. I enjoyed like the process. I felt like a real like sense of accomplishment, and then started to think, oh, what about swimming? And then so I was a pretty strong swimmer anyway, but I hadn't swam in a pool for years. So it can't be that difficult. It was. And then I decided to
must have been not too bad because you'd done some swimming before, so that must
yeah,
have been a big advantage.
I was blessed with having good like stroke technique, so it was just a case of like the fitness like not being there. But it was I think I started to do a couple of sprint tries. The first couple of those I found really difficult. It was just the switching from one sport to another, and it that transition was really difficult. But
I think that's one of the things that gets people really stressed out, is I think with first triathlons, is the transition, because it is like, I've got to have everything ready, and you kind of want to set it out perfectly and it all to go right, and it quite often doesn't, and even when you're like really experienced, it can go a bit wrong sometimes as well. So but it is like a stress point, definitely. So what you kind of worried about in transition? Was there anything in particular, or?
You know what is, I think every triathlon that I've done, I've like picked up something that that would be helpful to bring. Right. So things like like talcum powder, putting that in your like shoes, because you come out of the water and you've got wet feet, and then putting your wet feet in, it just things like that helps. Or it is like fueling. I just never did the first few. And then, I just wouldn't, or I'd forget to like pick it up in transition, or I carry it with me and then never have it, and just things like that. It would definitely be like learning curves, because I think with fueling, you learn the hard way.
Yeah.
It's one of those like, don't feel great. I wonder why that is. And then for next time, like, okay, I need to actually take
sure something on that. And actually stick to it as well, rather than just taking it with you and going, oh look, I forgot to forgot to eat whatever I brought or drink whatever I drank.
Or like I just think actually after the swim, like taking a wetsuit off on the move was a whole big like thing. Just like it's not something you do regularly, is it? Like taking off items of clothes like when you're running, it's not something that you do.
No, it's not. It's like there's so many things, aren't there, that kind of like that you kind of progress into as you go through the sport, and the first one you're just like trying to get through it without making some mistake and just trying to finish the event, aren't you? And then you kind of pick up other stuff along the way, but there is quite a lot that you can add in. And I think quite often people get stuck, actually. They kind of like go, I don't need to do, they get to a point where they're like, well, I don't really need to learn that because I'm not that fast. Do you find that? Do you see that people will do that? They'll go, I'm not going to learn how to be more efficient in transition because it doesn't make a difference. But actually it makes a massive difference. I'm always talking to people
I've had a conversation with one of my athletes about this, actually, and I was just looking at some of her recent race results, and for the bits where she was swimming, cycling and running, she was pretty much on a par with athletes around her, but the transitions were significantly slower than everyone else. I was just like, what on earth are you doing in there?
I know.
Talk me through it, because I'd love to know.
I know. I think there is a bit of like, I don't need to be that fast because I'm not that good. I think some people have that mindset of like they're not that good, so they don't have to make an effort in transition. It won't make a difference to my overall time. But yeah, like you say, if she's on a par with the faster athletes, then she could be up there.
I actually worked out if her transition times were I think one of them in particular, I think it was like T2, was like 2 minutes faster. So on par with other people, she would have been 3 places higher.
Yeah,
And
it's massive, isn't it?
that's significant. And like she's someone who's going for age group stuff next year.
So then it is important.
And it does matter.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. I'm not sure why it is. I think there is a little bit of mindset around it, and sometimes people need to kind of think, yes, this is important. I need to practice it as well, like practicing it in like you say, with the wetsuit, taking the wetsuit off. It's not something that we do very often, and to be honest, it's not something that I practice either very often. I just would do it in races, but it's probably something that you should. If you go for an open water swim, I guess you can do it like in the car
exactly.
park. Just do it quick. You might not be getting on your bike, but just like try and get it off as quickly as you can.
Yeah, because like, and also if you just do it in like, you do it in your like front room or something, you're not simulating exactly how your body feels when you immediately get out of the water. It's likely that your hands are going to be cold, your feet are going to be cold, maybe going to be a little bit out of breath. After an open water swim, generally your legs like haven't quite woken up yet. I don't know whether that's just me, but as soon as I finish an open water swim and I start like having to like walk or run, they take a while to like, the blood starts flowing back to them again. So yeah, trying to do it after an open water swim and trying to simulate as much as possible the experience they would have on race day, I think just helps.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so you did your duathlon, your 10, 40k, 5k, and then you decided you wanted to add some swimming into the mix. So what happened next then?
So I was juggling like those 3 sports. And obviously working full time as well, which was a bit of a challenge. I signed up to a couple of sprint triathlons, did those, really enjoyed them. Actually preferred the triathlon format to duathlon. I think it's maybe I think running is probably not one of my strongest events, whereas triathlon I think suited me better, so I started to go down that route. I did my first full distance triathlon, I think it was the London one actually. And like I enjoyed it. Like it was hard, but really enjoyed it, and it was a really good introduction into that community as well, like these really, really big events of lots of people doing a similar sport to you. I just really enjoyed that. But I think in the back of my mind, like I think at that point I wasn't really aware of GB age group stuff, but I think on that day I noticed people wearing the kit. GB, like the kit, and the names on it, and I was thinking, like, how do I how do I do that? Like what, like, because they seem really good and they're wearing the kit, but like how do I get to that? Like, what's the process? So that's when I started to look into.
So that was like your first triathlon, then you saw that and were inspired to.
Yeah, I was like looking around, just thinking, and there were all sorts of people. There were people in these the GB age group kit, but there are also people who did the cycle on Bromptons, all sorts, who were like equally as inspiring. I'm like, well, good for you. Like, you don't have to have all this like really fancy kit. Just do it on the bike that you commute in. I think that was a really good insight into everyone can do it. You don't have to have really expensive equipment, and sometimes there is that pressure. I feel like I need to have a triathlon bike, or I feel like I need to have this, that and the other. You don't. Just think, like, have a look in your existing kit box. What you can probably use most of it in there, and that's fine. So I think that was a good way for me to see like anyone can do it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it can go the other way with kit as well. I think I didn't get a good bike for ages because I was like, I don't need a good bike, I'm not that good. And it was like, no, you really could get a new bike and it would make a difference. So I think there's like but you do go to the events, and sometimes people notice all the gear and they're like, oh my god, I feel really like out of place because everyone's got all this amazing kit, and it's not true. Not everybody has amazing kit.
Yeah, I think it's
quite
definitely
often they're not that good. That have some people that have amazing kit aren't even like
yeah,
as fast
isn't it
as
so
someone on a
satisfying?
Brompton.
Isn't it like really satisfying when you like overtake someone who's on a 10 grand bike and you're like on like the one that you commute on every day? Like,
yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure. I think it's a good point to you don't have to have all the gear. So then you looked into GB age group, and I'm assuming you kind of looked on the British Triathlon website or something like that to find out how to qualify. It's quite complicated. I find it quite complicated, the kind of process.
There's lots of like information on the British Triathlon website, and it took me a long time to sort of get my head around it. And I think initially I did decide first of all, like what the process is, like what help do I need to, or like on that process, and do I have capacity to take something like this on? I was already sort of pretty like committed to doing it, but I knew that my work week presented quite a few challenges. I was pretty like time starved as it was. So at the time I was like arranging a lot of my own training, and that was taking a lot of like mental like headspace for me to figure out, I can do that. And then I think I had the knowledge to make all these sessions, but I was struggling to fit it all together. So I sought the help of a coach at that point. They were very knowledgeable on the age group journey, and that really, really helped. And they, just someone telling you, right, on Monday do this, Tuesday do that, Wednesday do that, great. Because if someone just tells me what to do, I'll just do it. And that's I'm very, very consistent, but I just need someone just to tell me what to do. And I started to make some improvements pretty quickly. I think set my mind to do it. I think at the start of, it was probably like in January, and then I ended up doing some like qualifying competitions that summer. And obviously there's quite a long wait because you have to qualify 1 year and then you do the competitions the following year. So it's quite a long like build up to it. But I continued working with the same coach and did do for I think just over 2 years in the lead up to it, through the qualifying competitions and then the event itself. And that really helped, just having the same person sort of
like understanding like your situation and what and your time availability and that kind of thing, and knowing how you respond to training as well. So did you qualify like the first, which events did you qualify in? Did you qualify straight away, or was it
I think the year that I did my first the London triathlon, I think I did the same event the following year, and I was looking at like my results compared to other people in my age group. I think I came maybe like 7th or so in my age group. At that point I was like, okay, I'm a little bit way off. So for those that like aren't aware, you have to come in the top 4 of the competition they aim to qualify in, or within 120% of the person who wins. So it's a bit of like maths to do.
Yeah, I know. I tried to work it out the other day with someone, and I'm like, because it's also like time as well. It's not just like, so it's
so that's always like fun and games. But so in that triathlon I did in the London one, I knew that I probably wasn't good enough at that point to qualify for GB age group stuff, but I wasn't like miles off. And I think that's when I started to think, okay, maybe if I get some external support, i.e. a coach, then that will help with that process. So between like doing those 2 like London triathlons 1 year after the other, I did a few other like local events and a few sprint triathlons. Just kind of just did the best I could given my like really full-on work situation. And then when I then sought the help of a coach, that's when my training really started to like ramp up. So the aim of that year was to qualify for the European standard distance triathlon. And like honestly, I didn't think I was good enough to do it when I was like, training's been going okay, but you know what, some of the women in my age group are really good. and I had like proper
Which
like
age
imposter
group
syndrome.
Which
It would be the 30 to 34.
Yeah, it's a tough age group, isn't it?
Yeah. And you know, you sort of go to these competitions, rack up your bike, and then I'd just be looking around thinking, I'm just not I'm just so out of place right now. But
it's really funny because if you spoke to anybody there, they'd probably say exactly the same.
Yes,
they felt that they're exactly the same sort of situation. I'm not sure if it should be. Everyone's like looking at each other, thinking the same thing.
I don't know whether that trait is more common in people who have been socialized as female, but
probably
I certainly see it a lot in my athletes as well. Just they you know, a little bit of compare and despair, like, oh, I'm just not good enough to do this, or you know, those like feelings of, oh, I'm not good enough to do that, like seem to be quite prevalent, or at least more prevalent in people who've been socialized as female. But
and when you go to, like you're saying earlier, you go to the event and a lot of the people that are competing are men, like there is still a majority that are men. You go and they've got like all the gear and what have you, and it's intimidating. It can be like, oh, I don't know whether I should be here, or whether this is my space, or whether I like you say, whether I'm good enough. That's a massive thing for so many people. Think they're not good enough. You know, it's something that we should say to ourselves every day: is I am good enough, I am enough, I am enough.
yeah, you deserve to be here.
You deserve,
so I think I actually booked myself into 2 opportunities to qualify. So usually every year for the event that you want to qualify for, you have, I think, usually 3 events that you're able to attend and qualify for. I signed up to 2 of them thinking I've got one to have a go at, and I've got a backup one if I don't manage to do it there. But I think it was which one was it now? Oh, it was Leeds actually. So it was like the home of triathlon in the UK. Did the Leeds Triathlon. I came second in my age group, which meant I qualified for the European Championships. It was a really, really tough day out, but I was really, really proud of myself for I mean, first of all, getting around that run course, because my goodness, it was that difficult. But I think I really surpassed my own expectations at that point.
What was difficult about it?
Hilly. Hilly. Just you get out of transition and there was a hill just like this.
Right, nice.
I was like, great. And I think it was a 3 or 4 lap course. So
you have to do it several times.
Yeah, and that wasn't one hill. There was several.
There was many hills. Yeah,
all the hills. So I qualified in the Leeds competition. I then did another triathlon later that year, and I think I came also in the top 4 there as well. So I was like, I'm great. I'm going to the Europeans, amazing. But I sat down and talked to my coach. He said, "You don't fancy trying to qualify for the World Age Group Championships, do you?" And at this point, I was like, "What?" Like that was, for me, it was just like so. I hadn't even thought about it as that being an option for me. So there was one remaining qualifying event that year. It was in, I think, like 3 or 4 weeks' time. I just thought, right, I'm going. I'm gonna do it.
Go, yeah.
Be brave and go for it. And had a pretty, like, say, okay day. I think I was pretty lucky with who turned up to that qualifying event, but I also qualified for the World Championships as well.
Yeah.
And so like when I looked back at my season that year, I just had like really like gone above and beyond what I thought I was able to, and I'd really like, you know, ticked off a lot of my season goals that year. And I just thought, okay, so I'm going to the European and World Championships next year. This is just like bonkers. So I had a really good like winter of training. I was really, really motivated for it, to be honest, and I worked really hard over the winter and in the early spring. I studied the courses in both of them, and they were both very hilly courses, especially the World Championships. So I thought because of that, it would be good for me to do some other triathlons which were similarly hilly. Like it wouldn't have been beneficial for me to do a really flat course, because all that would have told me is, okay, you can do well on a flat course, but what about hills? So I signed up to a couple of events in Wales.
Nice.
So
Which
which
ones?
I did the wildflower
Oh
duathlon.
yeah.
And then I also we went on holiday in Wales in the summer, and in like the Brecon Beacons, so I was doing loads of cycling, loads of like running out in the hills, and that was really, really good. So my whole year was like, right, where can I go on holiday? I can bring my bike. Where can I simulate like race conditions? I was really like, wanted to like do as well as I could.
Is it flat where you live then? Is it quite flat?
Yeah, well, I live in central London, so
yeah,
it's there's a few
tricky for training then to get out of London and things.
Yeah. I sometimes go out into like Epping, Hertfordshire. It is flat. There's no the course in Pontevedra had a 3 to 4 kilometer climb at like 5%.
Right.
And there's nowhere really you can simulate that in London. Maybe in like Box Hill, but like I live way away from Surrey, so it's not something I want to do every weekend. But yeah, so I really, really focused on those events. The Europeans were in Madrid and were in June. So that was my first experience of doing GB age group stuff. And I mean, I think because I've only ever done UK based like triathlons, I think my experience there was I started to really, really appreciate how well UK triathlons are organised.
Okay.
Because and I think anyone who did go to the Europeans in Madrid they'll know what I mean by this. Yeah, it was a good event, and it was really good to meet the age groupers. There's a really big like GB contingency there, but some of the comms from the race organisers just was lacking slightly.
Right. Okay.
There was a last minute change.
What's going on?
Yeah, there's a last minute change to a duathlon, and they announced that in the morning of the race, about an hour and a half before it started.
Okay.
Things like that.
It teaches you to be adaptable and resilient.
Yeah, I think at that point I was like, okay, right, well, that's how it is then.
I suppose everyone's in the same situation as well, aren't they? Like no one knows what's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not great, is it? That's not what you want when you're getting ready for an important race. You kind of want to know exactly what's going on.
Yeah, sometimes like you do some like race visualization beforehand, so you sort of imagine what it's going to be like. And there was no swim, so
right,
obviously we had extra running, but the run course was really, really long. So usually in a duathlon you do a longer run, you cycle, then a slightly shorter run. For this one they did the shorter run, bike, and then the longer run, but the runs were actually too long, like significantly longer than they were meant to be. I only really figured this out on the first run, where it was meant to be 5k, but it was actually 6.5. And I remember thinking, oh no.
Yeah, because like pacing and things, it makes a difference with that, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So, but I got through the race there, and by some like miracle I actually managed to win it.
Amazing.
Which was huge. But it almost didn't feel like not like I didn't like deserve the win, because everyone is in the same boat. But it wasn't a triathlon, so to call myself the European age group,
you just said your running was not your strongest discipline a minute ago. I've done a lot of
work on my running.
Right, okay.
A lot since then.
Okay.
But there's always in the back of my mind thinking, oh, does it really count? Because it's not.
Oh no, yeah, don't do that. No.
Yeah. I thought I can right some wrongs at the World Championships. Fingers crossed the swim is on. So I competed in that it was like the third week of September, and the swim did go ahead. It was a very well organised event. We had a great time.
Yeah.
And I mean, I spent like the whole summer like building up to it. I felt really, really prepared for the event, just mentally and physically. I was like, I'm ready to do this. And I ended up coming second in my age group. So
Wow.
won a silver medal, really happy with that. And just, I think I had one of my most positive race experiences that I had pretty much all of that season.
So with your training, when you started training for, to get those amazing results, you'd got a coach, you were still working full time, were you? Yeah, at that point. So you were trying to kind of fit your training in as best you could. What was the difference then in your training? Like, how did it feel different to how it was before?
Yeah, so I'd say every single session, run, bike and swim, had a very specific purpose. So there wasn't any time I just go out for a run.
Yeah.
There would be a very specific focus in terms of either for runs, I'd have an interval tempo session and a long run every week. I just used to run 3 times a week. And then the cycles, you'd have a more of an endurance focus, a longer cycle, and then 2 very specific like interval type sessions, which were either like again threshold or tempo type session. And swims followed a very similar format as well. So again, like every session, I was like, I knew what I had to do, which made it mentally easier for me to just go out and do what I needed to do. I didn't have to think about. Didn't think I had to think about the session, and because it was like written out for me, like sometimes I would adapt it because either I wanted to make the session. Sometimes I made the sessions harder because I thought, I feel really good right now, so I'm going to adapt it so that it includes this. Or I could feel that like in the latter months in the lead up to the World Championships, I felt my running was really, really coming on, but I needed to stretch myself a bit more. So I increased the run volume because I feel like my body could take it. But I've also adapted them to like decrease the volume or intensity based on like fatigue levels, like work stress fluctuated, but on weeks where there was a lot of stuff at work going on, I knew your body can't differentiate between the stress it feels at work and the stress it feels with exercise. So that's always a bit of a balancing act as well. It's not just the training side of things. You have to factor in that your body feels stress in other ways as well. So I just tweak it based on that.
Yeah, I think people underestimate that. They kind of compartmentalize things. So they say, this is my training, so I should be able to do everything on there, whatever else is going on in my life, whether I've had enough sleep or not, whether I ate enough, or all those things, and they'll think it's a separate thing, but it really isn't. Your life is like all interconnected, and something goes off somewhere and you have to kind of compensate somewhere else. So it's always like a juggling act with all sorts of things. It's like when I was training a lot and kind of that was my focus, the house was not getting tidied up very often, and the garden was a mess. It's all those things have to give for you to be able to put something into your life. You have to maybe back off something else, and you can't do everything all of the time. And I think some people just still try to, or they think that it's important to keep all of the balls up in the air all the time, and it's like, no, you can't do that all the time. You're just going to get exhausted and burn yourself out.
And I felt as well that like the last year or so I've been doing a lot of work on like tracking my cycle and seeing how those, like when I feel like I can push my body more and when actually I need to really listen to it and actually take some rest. So I've got a lot better at that over the last year or so, and I see my individual patterns, so I'm able to not even just with training, but just with life stuff, like when would be a really good time for me to do some more social activities, when would be a time when actually I probably need to just have some nights in and just rest. And that's probably the best thing for me to do then. I don't need to say yes to all these plans. I can just say, actually, no, maybe we can do it in a couple of weeks' time. Like, you don't have to justify it. Just say, actually, no, actually, now's not a good time. Next few weeks' time would be great.
Yeah, because it's a temporary thing as well, as to remember, isn't it? 'Cause sometimes if you don't track your cycle, you feel awful and you think, I'm going to feel awful like this forever and I'm never going to do anything ever again. Well, that's how I get sometimes. But yeah, I think definitely, like, and even like going for a run, you know, I used to notice that there were certain runs that I was like, I don't want to go that way because I might see someone or something. You know, I just want to be on my own, like running on my own and not see anybody on this run. So certain times of my cycle, I would just like pick different routes because I didn't want to bump into anyone. I suppose in London, you don't have that luxury.
Yeah. I think, yeah, it depends. I guess like certain times of the day that you can try and, there are peak times a day where you're likely to see lots of people. But yeah, I think like I've definitely adapted my training based on that. Like not like there is some scientific research to suggest that certain training types are beneficial at different points in the cycle. I think syncing your cycle and training is good, but I think you also need to take it with a pinch of salt sometimes, in that if you look at the research studies, there's a fair bit of like individual variation between the participants. So if you just have a look at the averages of all of that data, it can be quite misleading. So you know, you need to figure out what works for you, and if there'll be different points in the cycle where you have increased energy levels, you feel like you're more outgoing and you can go out and do things more, and there'll be other times where you might feel like the whole world is collapsing in on you. You can go from one day to another and it can just be like that. And like you said before, knowing that that emotional state is temporary, and you can recognize that in previous cycles. Noticing the patterns really helps. You know what, on like say day 16, I always feel like rubbish, and I feel like that every single time. But if you look at what my hormones are maybe doing around that time, just after ovulation, there's a really like a significant drop in hormones. So having low hormones, like no wonder I'm feeling like that.
I think it like helps with my relationship as well. You know, it's like I can explain it. Like I'll get really annoyed about silly things, like, whereas other times it doesn't bother me. It's just like, why did you do that? Why did you leave that? Why would you do that? But and then I can kind of like listen to it in my head and go, that's because you're feeling very and I can kind of like still just sometimes, not all the time, I can let it go, and then I realize like why I'm doing that, and I think my husband knows now as well a little bit why that's happening and why I'm being a pain in the ass basically sometimes.
It's always funny where like partners recognize their patterns as well. So one thing my father said the other day was like I think I was having a really like hungry couple of days, and then he said, yeah, you're always really hungry at this point of your cycle. And I was like, no, I'm not. And then I looked through my notes, and like, yeah, he's right.
I love the way you just, no, I'm not. I was doing that the other day with pasta. We were having like pasta, and I think I must have come in and I was starving, and I was like, why are you boiling the water like that? It's like, for God's sake.
It's like they're doing it to deliberately annoy us.
Yeah, I mean, why would you put a pan like that? Why would you do? Anyway, it's pathetic. Yeah, so that's really good that you started implement. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to try and kind of wrap things up a little bit. But so you talked a little bit about your menstrual cycle, and you had some kind of frustrations with that. It sounds like you were doing a good job of adapting things and kind of changing your training for that. So
yeah,
that kind of led you to.
That was more derived that I felt like I wasn't getting that support from my coach. They were really good at outlining the sessions, but when it came to, I'd write in my training notes that adapted this session because of, it could be I get some really, really severe cycle related symptoms from like day 1 to 3, and it really, really affects me. So I'd write about that in the notes. I've adapted this session because of this, and it wasn't addressed. It wasn't as like a talking point. And I just thought, okay, so if I'm not maybe getting the support that I need like here, I'm going to seek it from elsewhere. So I see actually the book Raw on your book. That's one of the books I read, along with Period Power by Maisie Hill, which is a fantastic book. And I think that really started me on my journey of understanding my cycle better, and then thinking, I know I can't be alone in feeling like this. I think my next big challenge is going to be like how I can support other people do the same, which then started me off on the journey of becoming a triathlon and running coach, and specifically for like supporting females to do the same.
So with your tri coaching, you do monitor people's cycles, and you help people to understand about their, like, when they're feeling better, and then they track, do they, with that?
So I like, one of the things I'll talk to them about is like, I want openness from you. So I want you to write down in your training notes, like reflect on it. Is there anything that might have impacted your motivation or performance or something during that session? You need to tell me, and just be open about it. So I try and give an example. Like, I'm working with someone at the moment. She's a marathon runner. It's like a marathon block of this summer, but she experiences very, very severe cycle-related symptoms like nausea, vomiting, all sorts. And something we talk about on a regular basis is how she can manage her symptoms as well as continue with her training and racing. And she's asked questions about does like really practical things, like, so a marathon is a long day out. So like, what should I do in terms of like managing like sort of like period products on the day? Do you have any suggestions? So things like tampons, like you may not have access to like a toilet facility for quite some time. Like and for some people that's too long, especially if they have like a heavy period, and like you can't guarantee that you'll be able to, and you don't have to worry about it. You really just don't want to worry about it. So I gave her some like practical advice about trying out menstrual cups or other different products that she could use, and trying that in training first. So when she came to like racing, then hopefully that would help. So it's just having like an open conversation about it. I'm not shy about it. I will just ask what's going on with you.
I think that's important, and it's kind of easier maybe for some women to talk to a female coach about that kind of stuff, because I was quite happy to kind of put in that I've got PMT, I got really bad cramp. I remember doing a park run once, and it was just like, oh god, really bad cramps, and because it's like high intensity, it felt pretty bad. But then you don't get a response back. You're like, okay, maybe I shouldn't talk about this. So I think it's easy, we do need to be open about it and have conversations about it, because it can massively impact your performance. And if we don't talk about it, then like you say, you don't find the solutions, do you? You're just kind of left wondering, okay, and then thinking, well, nobody else is having a problem with this, everyone else must be coping fine, because we're not really talking about it. But I think no, people aren't always, and people often have really good ideas and really good advice that you can kind of tap into and share. Like the menstrual cups, that's something that I've been using for years now, because it's just so much easier. And then like the period pants.
And then also like, there are so many companies now
really
that they're cropping up everywhere now, like these products. And like you don't have to stick with what you've always done. There are loads of new products now that you can try. There's a lot now. I went in M&S yesterday, and they were selling the period pants. I was like, oh god, I didn't know. Oh, well done, M&S. They were selling them in there as well. But they're really good, especially like now, because
my periods are all over the place now because I'm getting older, and it's just like that. If you can use those products, I think they're a lot better when your period's a bit weird and kind of like you don't know when it's starting and stopping, and it's really heavy sometimes, and it's just, yeah, that those kind of things can really help you.
Yeah, and actually on that point, like if we think that like menstrual cycles are a taboo topic, I would say perimenopause and menopause is even more so.
Yeah.
I think so many people stumble into perimenopause not really knowing what the hell is going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like, I mean, thankfully there is some more literature coming out, but I think there still needs to be a greater degree of like education on that as well. And like especially women, just a lot of people don't know what they're
Yeah, you
heading
don't.
into.
I mean, I think I sort of like I kind of was aware of it, and then I was like, oh, something's happening, and then I like to research everything, so I find out everything I can. But you know, part of you doesn't really want to either, because I think people are like, oh God, I'm getting older, I don't really want to deal with that or face that. So there can be a bit of avoidance and like not wanting to attribute it to the fact that you're getting older and things are going to change, and you're not who you, I mean, you're always going to be who you are, but you're not able to recover. You know, there's things that happen, definitely. And it's, yeah, it's part of aging. So, you know, in the West, we're terrified of aging, and it's like anything we can do to kind of stop it. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's going to happen. And if you can like accept it and embrace it and get through it in the best way that you can, keep doing the things that you love, then
yeah, I think it's funny, like the attitudes towards it, because you can, like, you'll start going through perimenopause and menopause, and then you look really fondly back at the time that you used to have periods. I can't imagine a time where I'd enjoy this aspect of it, but
yeah, no, I
kind of
quite
funny.
used to like when it was regular, like, because at the moment it's not. It's like, because I don't know where I am now, it's really confusing. I'm like, well, am I just feeling like that, or should I not be, or why is my period just started, or when's it gonna start? And so it's a bit like you don't really know where you are. And then there's like, yeah, I remember people going, oh, it's great, you know, you won't have periods anymore, it'll be great when your periods stop. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know if that is great or not.
Yeah.
Is it a good thing? I don't know.
Yeah, I think, well, there's huge benefits of having a cycle, you know, given like the power of estrogen, which
Yeah.
I like to call estrogen the Beyonce hormone. Like in the first like phase of the cycle, you know, that estrogen increases, and it's the like predominant hormone during that phase. It, you know, it boosts your mood, it boosts motivation.
My skin always looks really good.
Skin
Well.
looks great.
Yeah.
And then like when it starts to like dip off again, you just think, no, I want it back.
I know, definitely. Yeah, that's, yeah. It's interesting though, isn't it? I think it's amazing that we go through that cycle as well, like every month, that we can experience that. I mean, that's quite cool, really, to go through those changes and have to adapt and deal with them. And the more you can actually tap into it, the better, really, rather than sort of pretending it's not happening or avoiding it, or, you know, it's incredible, really, your body and your hormones and how it all works together.
Yeah, I think when people think about their cycles as well, they often just think about their period, and it's very centered around that, their experience of that. So, you know, if they have a very bad experience of their period, either that, you know, it being severe cycle-related symptoms or whatever it is, cramps, heavy bleeding, like whatever, they tend to have a poor view of like the rest of it. You know, spend like the week before dreading its arrival, and probably the week after like recuperating from, you know, its arrival as well. So actually in the literature is interesting, they don't tend to call it a menstrual cycle, they call it an ovulatory cycle.
Right, okay.
So they focus on ovulation being the, you know, the star of the show,
Yeah,
rather
that's a
than
good way of looking at it.
rather being like menstruation focused. Like without ovulation, you actually won't get a period, because that's the thing that sort of initiates that, you know, that to start happening. So, and like all, you know, all the stuff that goes on around ovulation and the hormones involved, there's some like huge ways that you can like harness harness your like hormones in that way.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Awesome. Okay. So yeah, we're kind of like getting we've gone a bit over, but that's okay. Is there anything else that you wanted to kind of add or talk about? You want to let people know where they can find out more about your coaching and you as an athlete? I'll put some stuff in the show notes anyway. I'll put some links there, but if you want to just let people know.
Yeah, sure. So you can find me on socials, on Instagram. My handle is @trycoachcourtney. I also have a website, the same thing, trycoachcourtney.com. I offer one-to-one triathlon and running coaching, and I specifically work with female athletes who want to work with their cycle.
Awesome. Okay. Well, it's really been great chatting to you today, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. And I'm sure people will want to find out more about what you do.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
No worries. Thanks for listening today. Have a great day. Take care. Bye for now.